Well, we work very closely together. So I work in the OECD Center for Tax Policy Administration, and we work often together with South Africa. So the OECD, what we do is we help countries design their tax system, to improve the design of their tax system, both on a domestic way and also strengthening international tax rules. And in that, South Africa is very much engaged with the work of the OECD because trying to implement, being aligned with all the international tax rules and best practices. We are here because as we work together nicely with South Africa, we want to help the country to improve the design of its tax system. So we've been invited here to come to give this presentation on inclusive growth.
But there was a time when the world used to speak about growth. Now we speak about tax for inclusive growth. Please tell me where that is in the context of South Africa.
The inclusive growth is basically because we started understanding that by focusing only on growth is not that not everyone basically gains from growth. So inclusive growth is basically that we should make sure that it are not the happy few that only benefit, but that say the growth evidence that everyone benefits from inclusive growth. And that, of course, is many countries face challenges there. You have certain groups of society who are more vulnerable, who are not winning, who are hit more after an economic crisis. That's not only an issue in South Africa, that in many OECD countries, growth dividends are not shared equally. And so the role is to make sure that we all grow together, that everyone is basically on board. It's about all on board in order to create inclusive societies that we all become better.
During your presentation, you spoke about externalities, both negative and positive. Can you tell me some of those from an outsider's view when you look at South Africa?
Well, there are many roles of a tax system to play. It's like revenue raising capacity, and we have to design a tax system so that we distort as little as possible, and we want to use the tax system to redistribute. But another role is in the presence of, as you say, external effects, like negative external effects. Clear example is if I smoke a cigarette, you might get ill because of my smoking. Now that's an external effect that when I smoke I don't take into account because I don't pay a price for that. So that's why there is a tax which forces me to pay a price for my smoking, so that that negative effect that I put on someone else is internalized. That's why there's a role for excise duties on tobacco and cigarettes and alcohol. And there's also same in environment related taxes. And like, having a carbon tax, for instance, is very important so that we all start polluting less, so that we're ready to tackle these challenges of climate change, for instance.
It's very hard for any tax professional with their salts to come into this country not knowing that South Africa is facing a tax inquiry, if you will, at the moment. From an OECD point of view, how do we quickly nip this in the bud and get back to the business of using the tax revenue for the betterment of the people?
Well, first let's say that taxes and tax systems should be designed always. Every country is an ongoing basis. Tax systems are never perfect, also because societies change, so you need to design always differently. What I've heard is, for instance, you have now this very heated debate on the VAT rate. Now, your 15% standard VAT rate, that is not particularly high. On average in the OECD, the VAT rate is 19%. It would be a real mistake to lower the VAT rate back to 14%. You have basically a very well-designed VAT of broad base with relatively few exemptions, few reduced rates, and a rate which of 15% that is okay. So you basically shouldn't change that at all. So you should definitely leave that discussion behind and move to the next challenge to continue strengthening your tax system.
That is not a very popular view in this country. Everything that goes up gets a bit of protestation. But my final question, should South Africa be looking to join the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development?
Becoming member of the OECD, we definitely would welcome South Africa to become member. That is a long process that basically South Africa has to ask to the OECD to become a member, and then there is a process that the country will need to go through. It's because you need to align with some of the core principles of the country, so that of the OECD, so that is a long process, but that definitely is something that South Africa would gain from, as we would, as an organization, would gain from South Africa becoming eventually a member of the OECD.